You know the kind of person who can feel a room change before anyone says a word. Someone walks in, sets their bag down a little too carefully, and you already know their day fell apart somewhere. Nobody else caught it. You did. You hear the pause before a friend says it's fine. You catch the flicker in someone's face they were sure they hid. People call it a gift. They also call it exhausting, dramatic, too much, and somewhere, quietly, you've probably wondered if something in you is just wired a little too tight. Stay with me. Because it isn't. Today we're decoding the psychology of people who are too aware. Why you notice what everyone else walks straight past. Why this can feel less like a superpower and more like a radar you were never taught how to switch off. And by the end, I think you'll see the real problem was never how much you see. It was that nobody ever gave you the second half of it. Let's start with what it actually feels like from the inside. You're mid-conversation, and someone's words are saying one thing while their shoulders say another. Most people just hear the words. You hear both, and now you're running quiet math. Nobody asked you to run. Are they upset? Was it something I said? Do I fix it or leave it? You walk into a meeting, and within about 10 seconds you've mapped the whole thing. Who's tense? Who's performing? Where the real conversation is happening underneath the spoken one. Someone sends a one-word reply and you read it 4 times. Sound familiar? You get a photo from a group event and your eye goes straight to the one person whose smile isn't quite reaching their eyes. You're on a call, and you hear the exact half-second where someone's voice tightens, so you already know the answer is going to be no before they say a word. You pass 2 people on the street who have clearly just argued, and you feel the leftover heat in the air between them without anyone telling you a thing. It's not that you're choosing to analyze people. You just can't not. The information shows up whether you invited it or not, like a channel you can't turn off. And here's the part that quietly wears you down. Everyone else seems to move through the same room lighter than you. They didn't notice the sigh. They didn't catch the shift. They got to just be there. You were working the whole time, reading, scanning, translating. And then you go home tired in a way that's hard to explain to anyone. Because, from the outside, you didn't do a single thing. You know that feeling, right? So what's actually going on in there? Why do you catch what other people miss completely? Part of the answer has a name. Psychologists call it low latent inhibition. In most brains, there's a kind of filter running in the background, quietly deciding that most information is irrelevant and screening it out before it ever reaches your attention. The hum of the air conditioner, the stranger's expression 2 tables over, the tiny change in a friend's voice. Most brains file all of that under not important and move on. Yours lets more of it through, which means more of the world arrives in your awareness, all at once, in higher definition. Think of it like this. Most people are handed a version of the world that's already been edited down. The boring parts cut out, the background blurred, the volume leveled. You get the raw footage instead. Every frame, every sound, nothing trimmed. It's richer, sure. It's also a lot more to sit through. There's a related idea from a researcher named Elaine Aron, who spent decades studying what she called the highly sensitive person. Her work suggests that roughly 1 in 5 people take in sensory and emotional information more deeply than everyone else. Not because they're fragile, because their nervous system simply processes more and sits with it longer before moving on. Put those 2 things together and you get you. A radar with a wider sweep and a finer resolution than the screens around you. Other people's radar shows the big, obvious shapes. Yours shows the small returns too. The faint blips at the edge. The tiny signals that half the time turn out to actually mean something. That is not a malfunction. That's just a different machine, running a different way. But a radar this sensitive rarely comes out of nowhere. And this is where it gets a little more tender, so stay with me. For a lot of people who are too aware, the awareness was trained into them early. If you grew up somewhere the emotional weather could turn fast. A parent whose mood you had to read before you knew what kind of evening you were walking into. A house where catching the shift early meant you caught it in time. Your brain learned a lesson before you even had words for it. Notice everything. Stay a step ahead. Safety lives in seeing it coming. Psychologists call that hypervigilance. A nervous system that keeps scanning the horizon long after the danger is past, because at some point, scanning was the thing that kept you okay. You didn't sit down and choose this. You were shaped by it. Your awareness is the fingerprint of everything you once had to survive. And notice, this isn't some flaw you developed. It's a skill you mastered. You got so good at reading danger that the reading just never learned how to stop, even in rooms that were always going to be safe. And if you zoom out far enough, there's an even older story underneath. Every group of humans that made it needed someone wired like you. The one who felt the mood in the camp turn. Who noticed the silence in the trees before anyone understood why it mattered, the lookout. The sentinel who saw it first and gave everyone else the extra seconds that kept them alive. Awareness like yours was never a modern accident. It's an ancient and honorable job. The trouble is, nobody ever told the radar the war was over. And here's where it gets complicated, because seeing everything is one thing. But if you're this kind of person, you don't just see it, you feel it. Someone near you is anxious, and minutes later, so are you, and you couldn't quite say why. A friend is heavy on the phone, and you carry that weight around for the rest of the day like it's your own. There's real machinery behind that, too. Scientists talk about mirror neurons and about emotional contagion, the simple, well-documented fact that humans catch each other's emotional states almost like a cold. For most people, that catching is faint. For you, with the volume already turned up, it can be a lot. You don't just notice the mood in the room. You absorb it into your own body. So you leave gatherings drained. You dread certain people, not because they're cruel, but because being near them downloads their whole storm into you. You've spent your life feeling things that were never even yours to feel. You can walk into a good moment and, without meaning to, start scanning it for the crack. Not because you want to ruin it. Because some part of you learned a long time ago that the crack is usually there, and finding it first is how you stay ahead of it. So even the good moments come with a little homework. And that's the part people miss when they call your awareness a gift and just leave it there. Because a radar that never powers down doesn't only catch the danger. It catches all of it. The real threat and the harmless flicker. The fire and the candle. Treated exactly the same. So you feel tension in a room that has nothing to do with you, and you take it home anyway. You decode a text at midnight that was, almost certainly, just a text. Your system can't always tell the difference between something you truly need to act on and something you were simply never meant to hold. A gift you cannot put down isn't only a gift. Somewhere along the way, it also becomes a weight. You were given eyes that see more than most. What nobody ever handed you was permission to look away. So let me say the thing you might have needed to hear for a very long time. There is nothing wrong with you. You are not too much. You are not paranoid. You are not dramatic. You are not wired too tight. You are a radar built by a world that once needed you to see everything, and it still works exactly the way it was designed to. The gift was always real. What was missing was never a way to turn your perception down. It was permission to decide what to do with everything it brings you. Because being aware and being responsible for everything you're aware of are two completely different things. You can notice the tension and choose not to carry it. You can feel someone's mood and let it stay theirs. You can read the entire room and still decide, tonight, that the room is not your job. And here's the difference that changes everything. There's a version of your awareness that just watches, and a version that reaches out and grabs. Watching costs you almost nothing. Grabbing costs you the whole evening. Most of your exhaustion was never the seeing. It was the grabbing you did on reflex, before anyone ever told you that you had a choice. That's what boundaries really are for people like you. Not a wall thrown over the radar. You couldn't switch it off if you tried, and the truth is the world is quietly better for the people who see early. Boundaries are just you finally sitting down in the operator's chair, watching the screen instead of being the alarm, and getting to choose which blips you actually rise for. Awareness was always the gift. The missing piece was never a dimmer on your eyes. It was your own hand on the dial. If any of this landed somewhere real, do me one small favor. Leave a comment with the last thing you noticed that everyone around you walked straight past. I read them, and every time, it reminds me how many quiet radars are out there, running all night. You spent years believing the problem was that you see too much. It never was. You just never got taught the other half, the looking away, the setting down, the choosing. You don't need to see less. You just need to hold a little less of what you see. Subscribe to keep decoding yourself, and I'll see you in the next.